So I'm going to be totally honest. I'm nervous to be up here. This is my home group. And so of course I want everyone to like me and I don't want to disappoint you. But you know, that's just part of my character defects, right? Make it all about me. You know, first of all, I just want to say welcome to all the newcomers. Keep standing up when you're in your first 30 days. Like, I love seeing, personally, again, I'm going to make this all about me tonight. I love seeing people stand up in their first 30 days. Like, it takes a lot of bravery to keep doing that. And then when you get your 30 days, like, people are going to be cheering the loudest for you. So, you know, welcome, welcome home. And happy birthday to everybody celebrating tonight. It's awesome. And yeah, I also want to thank Love and Service for asking me to speak tonight. Full transparency, I actually had to double check with Luke that he asked the right Julia, because I was convinced he had listened to somebody else's tape and then asked me. I'm like, there's no way they want me here. But you know, here we are. If you hear anything good tonight, I stole it from somebody else, because that's everything I learned in AA, I learned from you guys. So some basics here. My sobriety date is July 15th, 2011. I have a sponsor and she has a sponsor who has a sponsor. And I have the privilege of sponsoring women today in sobriety as well. And as I mentioned, Love and Service is my home group. If you're online, we meet on Thursdays and Sundays. It's amazing. You know, growing up, I grew up in Davis, California. It's about an hour north of here, and I had a wonderful childhood. You know, I had loving parents with good values and really good hearts. Absolutely no alcoholism, as far as I know, on either side of my family. And I grew up with 3 sisters. And despite having this like wonderful, loving, caring household, I was miserable. I felt like I did not fit into my family. For as long as I can remember, I had this sensation of like, I need to get my skin off of me. I do not belong here. I felt like every emotion I felt was like too loud. I was just too much for everybody, and just feeling like I didn't fit in. I feel like I really spiritually connected with like Kevin McAllister when his mom's like, there are 15 people in this family and you're the only one who has to make trouble. Like, that was me. You know, we have this family photo. I'm the third of 4 girls in my family, and we're on this family vacation at the Bryce Canyon. And it's my 3 sisters. They're all like, you know, shoulders around each other, beautiful Bryce Canyon in the background. And I'm off in like the corner of the frame. Like, how dare they bring me here? I'm angry. And that picture really sums up like also just how I felt on the inside. You know, like internal angst aside, I was like a really good kid. I didn't get into trouble. I got straight A's. I was very athletic, played sports. I had all the right friends. The only trouble I got into was like mouthing off to my parents. You know, like I just didn't really understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and neither did they, to be completely honest. You know, any latchkey kids out there? Okay, not me. I had helicopter parents. They had to know like where I was at every moment of any day. If I was going over to someone's house, like they were calling the parents to make sure, you know, that they were home and I was supervised. I felt like I had very little freedom and autonomy growing up. You know, like, which really confused me. I was like, I'm a good kid. And, you know, to today, I feel like my parents must have like intuited that if they gave me a long enough leash, like I would have hung myself with it. But to me growing up, it just felt like I was in a cage. And, you know, my parents, they did the best. They did the best they could with the tools they had. Everything they did out of love. And, you know, I didn't have the words to describe my discomfort growing up. You people taught me those words. You people taught me that you gave me the language of irritable, restless, and discontent. For me, it just felt like I want to pull my skin off. And it took me, you know, a long time in this program to understand that those feelings, that's, you know, we call that like a spiritual malady. Like I am sick. No, I'm sick before I take my first drink. And I'll be sick long after. I'm just on a search for a solution. and I started seeking solutions to get out of that irritability, restless, and discontent, right? I don't want to feel that way, and I'll do absolutely anything I can to quiet the crazy. And so, long before I found alcohol, I started using other solutions. I self-harm as young as 12. I would use food, and later on I found alcohol, and that solution worked really, really well for me as well. Obviously, here I am. It worked well until it didn't. I used men. I used pretty much anything I could as a solution to get to try to fill that spiritual void inside of me. So, my first drink wasn't anything like super crazy or super special. I was 15 years old. And like I said, I had very little freedom. Everything was very supervised, but I could go to the bowling alley. Like I said, I grew up in Davis. There's a bowling alley on UC Davis campus. So parents dropped me off at the bowling alley, and I had some friends, and they had some alcohol, and we went out on the quad to drink. And from what I remember about that night, I didn't have any bad consequences. I had this feeling of being a part of, like I belonged finally. People wanted to include me. I liked the effect. I liked how I felt. Finally, I didn't feel like I needed to pull my skin off. I didn't know, I still to this day don't know if it was like I was putting on a mask or taking one off, but I liked how I felt. And I liked getting away with it, right? I got drunk, and I only got drunk a handful of times in high school. I just didn't have the access to it. Every time I did get drunk in high school, every time I drank in high school, I got drunk. I did not like the taste of it, but I didn't understand people who would like have a beer or 2 beers. Like, the point is to get drunk. And at that point, it was still fun. I wasn't having problems yet. And again, I didn't have very many opportunities. The summer after my senior year of high school, I was very excited to go to college and get that freedom I was itching for. My parents kind of blackmailed me into going into an eating disorder treatment facility. And I only bring that up because it's how I got to my first meeting of AA. It was a day-long program, Monday through Friday, like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that kind of like placated my parents. So I got a little more freedom in the evening. So I got to go out and drink more. Started showing up to program every day, hungover, sleeping through program, and they quickly kind of picked up that this isn't normal 17-year-old behavior. So they said, you need to go to AA once a week if you want to, if you don't want to get kicked out of this program. And I will do anything to, lie and cheat and manipulate, and I need to be free. So the first meeting of AA I went to, it was the Davis Young People's meeting. It's on Friday night, still out there in West Davis. It's a great meeting. At that point, I didn't really have problems. I didn't think it was a big deal that I'd be, hungover in the morning. My alcoholism hadn't yet gotten so bad that I could relate to anything. But what I did learn was that young people can get sober. I learned that there are places people can go, and some of them look like me. Because again, I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. And you people weren't telling me what to do and weren't shoving things down my throat. You just kind of let me be there. And I was done with people telling me what to do. So that attraction rather than promotion, like really set in young for me. So I graduated from my program on a Friday, and I moved into the UC Davis dorms on a Saturday. And by Halloween, I was out on a 5150. I arrived at college and then proceeded to just tank, that varsity athlete, that straight A student, like she was gone in a matter of months. All I wanted to do at college was party. Didn't really go to classes. But yeah, that Halloween night, I ended up, hospitalized, and it turned into a 5150. And, my 15-year-old sister, she had just turned 15 a few weeks earlier. She came to visit me in the hospital. I don't remember this, but I'm like strapped down to the gurney, and I'm like leaning over saying like, hey, like, get me out of these things. Like, we can make a run for it. And yeah, it's funny now. But like, that's what her high school looked like, for the next several years. Like, I robbed her of her high school experience, and I robbed her of having parents available to her, because they were just trying to keep me alive and really worried about me. And that 5150, that really kind of got me on the merry-go-round of what the cycle of my life would be like for the next several years. I was in and out of different treatment facilities. I'd go back to school for a semester, like maybe finish some classes. I'd drop out, I'd blow my life up, I'd be back in the hospital. And throughout this process, some of these feelings I had when I was like really young, just like kind of kept coming up. Like, no one knows what to do with me. I don't belong anywhere. You don't know what you're talking about. Different diagnoses are being thrown at me. Like, why am I supposed to believe you? Clearly, you don't know what you're talking about, and I don't belong anywhere. And what's wrong with me, right? Alcoholic was one of those terms that was thrown out at me, but like, so was a lot of other things. Like, why should I believe you? And do I even care if I'm an alcoholic? Like, do I even care? So, at this point, like, where am I now? Oh yeah. So during this point, like I'm in and out of different places. sometimes I'm in an SLE. I got sober for a little bit down in San Diego. I got involved in the Young People's AA, but it was just like fellowship. Like, I didn't want to do the work. I didn't know if I even wanted this long term, but I knew I wanted to like graduate college. And in order to graduate college, I had to at least like, finish my classes a semester here and there. So I know I like needed to be sober for a little bit. And that is one of the best things about this program, right? I'm like, where are our traditions? The only requirement for AA is a desire to stop drinking. You don't actually have to be sober, and it doesn't mean you have to want sobriety 24/7. Like, thank God for that. Because like, there were days I didn't want to be sober, but I knew I could still go to AA because like, okay, I don't really want to be sober, but like I need to be sober. And no one judged me for that. And I'm really grateful for the traditions in this program. All right, where am I here? Oh yeah. So again, like Young People's AA, like I loved. I was able to, again, like I got involved. I was able to pick up chips. I got 30 days, I'd get 60 days, I'd go back out, blow my life up. And that was just like, the cycle here and there. Things got bad. I started to learn like what a mental obsession is. And for me, what that looked like is I'm thinking about alcohol all the time. I'm thinking about like, how can I get it? I'm 19 years old. I can't get it that easily. Or I can't get it whenever I want. Like, how can I get it? How can I like create a good illusion so that we can drink at this event? And what's also crazy is my brain's telling me that like, oh, those bad things that happened, like, how you came to out of a blackout on the freeway, like that's not going to happen this time. Or you woke up in that random city, that's not going to happen this time, right? My brain's going to tell me these lies that it's going to be different this time. Because that's what my alcoholism does. I really put my family through the ringer. My family, my parents, my mom and dad could have really, really used some Al-Anon. My mom didn't really drink. My dad, he's an immigrant from Holland. He had like a Heineken once a day after work. Like, there's no out, like they didn't understand it either, and they tried so hard to like keep me alive. I'd call my dad. I couldn't call my mom because like I knew she couldn't handle it, but I'd call my dad to come pick me up from places, like really dark, scary places. And like, I truly to this day, I can't imagine like the pain I put him through. I'd call him, he'd come pick me up, and he would take me back to my parents' house and like tuck me in. And I'd be gone before they woke up in the morning. And other times where, my dad would chase me around town. Because he is so desperate and he just wants to keep his daughter alive. And I'm like banging on strangers' doors, being like, there's a man chasing me. It's just my dad trying to keep me alive. Yeah, we do insane things. We do insane things in our disease. I read my older sister's diary, because that's the kind of person I am. I'll read your diary and then be full of, indignation over what you write in there. But she basically said, like, we need to just dump Julia in the desert. Like, she is a waste of space. Like, we're done with her. And I would get pissed about that. All that did was reinforce these feelings of like, I don't belong here. No one loves me. And I am full of fear. I'm full of fear and I don't really know what to do about it. I don't know if I want to do anything about it. It's a lot more comfortable for me to be angry than for me to be in pain. So at the end of my drinking, like what that looked like for me is I was 21 years old. I'm living in a condemned, converted garage. That was my room. I was living in a garage that was infested with like cockroaches and black widows. I called my dad once, of course, to come kill some black widows. Yeah, he came too. I'm chain smoking cigarettes. I live a block away from the 7-Eleven, and the only place I'm going to is I'm just walking to and from that 7-Eleven. I'm 21 now, I can buy booze. I don't need to go anywhere else. I can just go to and from that 7-Eleven to get my cheap vodka and my Newport cigarettes. That's all I needed. I didn't have any friends. My roommates were trying to evict me because I was stealing their clothes and their food and their boyfriends, and they didn't like that. I actually, to be fair, never intended to keep the boyfriends, always gave them back. But that's the kind of person I was, right? I didn't care about you. It was all about me. I'm full of selfish self-centeredness to my core, right? July 13th, 2011, I'm living in Davis and I'm going to my friend's housewarming party in San Francisco. I used to say house party, I'd always mess it up. It's a housewarming party, different vibe completely. She had graduated from college. She had her first, big person job, in her own apartment. So we're, and it was another night, it was another night. And I woke up the next day in Pleasanton, as we do when we live in Davis and go to a party in San Francisco. And I was done. I'd woken up a lot of times, like the morning after, and, the shame and the regret and the apology tour, that happens. But it was always quickly forgotten and replaced with some sort of self-righteous anger, or, if you had had the night I had, or if you had my life, or, just excuses, right? And I kind of had this realization that is it ever going to be bad enough? What's got to happen? What's got to happen for me to actually be done? And I kind of realized that I didn't know it at the time, but I did step one right in that moment, right? I am powerless. There is going to be no event that's bad enough for me to stop. No earthly event, right? Nothing's going to get me to stop. I'm powerless over this. My life is absolutely unmanageable. So I did step one, right then in that moment, and I got into AA. I got a sponsor. Her name was Kirsten. She's up in Davis. She had what I wanted. She was young and beautiful and sober. She was a few years older than me, but she was sober. She had a few years. That was something I didn't have, and I wanted it. It took me 2 years to get to step two. Yeah, I had a real God problem. And I just got hung up on that. I would not recommend that at all. So I actually didn't end up doing step two until like I said, I was 2 years into sobriety. I moved to North Carolina for a job, and some scary things started happening. I started engaging in old behaviors that I only ever did when I was drunk. Now it really confused me, because up until that point, my understanding of my alcoholism was this idea of that we have a physical allergy. So for me, how I understood my alcoholism, it was that when I drank, I had no idea how much I was going to drink, and I had no idea what was going to happen. That's what made me an alcoholic. And so it was really easy for me to rationalize all those things I did because, of course, I was drunk. But here I am, stone cold sober, engaging in behaviors that I only did when I was drunk, and I did not know how to come to terms with that. But I knew where to go, right? I knew where to go. So I went to AA. And I did it. I got a sponsor. She says, you're going to do a 90 and 90. Her name was Donna D. She was this like tiny Southern woman who was like beautiful and terrifying. And she saved my life, truly. And, I was able to do step two. She taught me that, God can be a group of drunks. Like whatever you're doing is not working, but like, can you come here and trust this room and trust us a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, I can make that work. And so, I was able to do step two that way. And, my relationship with my higher power has progressed a lot since then. And something, again, with step two that I got hung up on and in a good way. Step two doesn't say that a higher power will relieve our alcoholism. So it will restore us to sanity. You know what? At 2 years into my sobriety, the alcohol wasn't like, I wasn't craving alcohol. That physical allergy, that craving, the mental obsession, all that stuff, it's kind of been quieted. But I'm doing these crazy things. I am insane. So that's what I really needed. I needed God so badly then. I needed to be restored to sanity. And, again, it's just like that idea that God shows up when we let them. And that's really what happened to me. So yeah, 2 years, I was in North Carolina for 2 years. Donna, she took me through the steps. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, it was like, it was honestly two of the best years of my life up to that point. In the middle of AA, in the program. And something I hadn't mentioned yet is that while I was out in North Carolina, I got engaged to someone living here back home. It was, a guy I met in high school, and we'd been dating on and off for a few years. And after my 2-year job, I moved back home and we got married. And my heart was completely broken because I left my whole fellowship behind. And I did not expect that. I really, truly did not expect how hard that would be. I really felt like heartbroken that I left them behind. And, I got back involved in AA, and over the next, 7 or 8 years, we moved a lot. We had several cross-country moves, and I got involved in AA every time. But every time I gave myself away a little less. Because I knew we were going to move, and it hurts. It hurts. So I kept kind of giving myself like a little bit less of myself away. And, someone told me, and I hear this in the room sometime, that the currency of AA is self-disclosure. And if you're not being open and honest and vulnerable in these rooms, you're not going to get a lot out of it. And I had a wall up, I was going to meetings, I'd get a sponsor and I'd do the thing, but like I wasn't in the middle and I fell off the edge, right? Thank God I didn't relapse, but the alternate isn't that great, in 2022, I had 10 years of sobriety. I had a beautiful house and a mortgage and 2 amazing, beautiful children and a loving husband. And I wanted to burn it all down. I wanted to leave. I wanted to escape. I'd convinced myself that like they'd be fine without me. I just need to breathe. I just need to breathe. I can't. And it's that irritability, that discontent. It's all coming back. And it was about the time I was Googling if I can voluntarily opt into a coma for like 6 months or so. I really wish I was joking. Like this is, yeah. I realized, again, I knew where to go. So I walked into, here I am in Contra Costa County. I walked into the rooms again, basically like a newcomer. I raised my hand and I'm like, I need help. I'm crazy. And another thing for people out there, whether you're new or you're not new, like time, all time really means is that you didn't drink and you didn't die. Like I had no program when I walked into the rooms with 10 years of sobriety. I've met people in these rooms who have significantly less time than me, and their programs are amazing. And it's just like incredible that you really just get into it. You get out of it what you put into it. So that was my little like side note there. And it's, I always want to remain teachable. I feel like I still learn something new in AA every week, every day, right? Which is like this program never ends, right? It's a program for living. You don't graduate from AA. You don't graduate from AA. I mean, all right, I'm not going to go down that road. But yeah, so I came back to AA. I got a sponsor, started going to meetings, and just like dove right back into the fellowship. And a big reason, again, sorry, I have notes because I'm really scatterbrained. And again, I want you to like me, so I want to sound great up here. Kind of when I was, Googling that, like, how to get into a coma situation, again, I had that realization that like the same way that like my life was never going to get bad enough for me to stop, my life will never get good enough for me to just be content as is, because I'm an alcoholic. And if I don't have a spiritual solution, I'm going to be insane. And yeah, like learning the hard way that a dry drunk is either going to lose their sobriety or lose their sanity is like not a fun lesson to learn. So yeah, I got back into the middle. I redid my steps, which is honestly just keep doing them. Like you learn something new every time. Like I said, you don't graduate from AA. And like what I learned this time around with step 3 is that it's an invitation, right? Turning my life and will over to the care of a higher power as I understand them. Like my first thought in any situation is wrong. Like it's right. If I'm running the show, my first thought's wrong. And my sponsor always says this. She says first thought wrong, sometimes second thought wrong. And in any situation, I have to like go through the Rolodex of thoughts until I arrive on like the appropriate one. I'm like, yo, no, can't say that. Nope, can't say that. And then eventually, like that's just allowing space for my higher power. My higher power, I like to imagine as like my house, and I have all the windows drawn and like very angry music blasting inside. And my higher power is just kind of like knocking on the window, like, you can invite me in anytime, I'm here. And so like that God problem I mentioned, I used to want God to be a Santa Claus. I wanted God to just fix all my problems and, do for me what I couldn't do for myself. But like I have to ask. And I have to, God's not just going to hand me things. My higher power is going to give me the tools. Going to give me the tools to handle any situation. And that's what this program has taught me. I'm only, I can't rest on my laurels in this program. Obviously, we saw what happened when I do that. The idea of like, oh, how are you doing? I'm coasting. I'm like, you can only coast downhill. You have to be working in this program in order to get anything out of it. I'm only granted, we say we're granted a daily reprieve, and that's contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual program. Like we can't get drunk off of yesterday's booze. It's gone, that's why. We can't stay sober on yesterday's AA. I have to do something every day in this program, even if it's just picking up the phone and checking in with someone. I have to keep AA at the center. Repairing relationships has been like one of the most fulfilling parts of this journey for me. Just my life, right? This is just my life now. A few years ago, my parents moved up to a tiny island up north. Like they're so far north, you get the like welcome to Canada text. Technically they're still in Washington. And I have the privilege now, like I spend about 6 weeks up there every year. And what that means for me is I now have a home group away from home. This little island, like when I come visit, they're like, they're happy to see me. They're like, how's it going, Julia? Like I get to do AA anywhere because we are everywhere. And no matter what room you walk into, you'll have a home. So, a few years ago, I was up visiting my parents. And at this time, my boys were about, I think they were 1 and 3 at the time. My youngest was like maybe 18 months old, and like he can walk, but like not well. Like toddlers and drunks have a lot in common, like super clumsy, have no regard for personal safety. And where my parents live, there's like this massive cliff. It's absolutely gorgeous and terrifying. And my boys are out there, they're running around, and I feel like they're like lemmings, and I have to keep like pulling them back from the cliff. And I'm like, what on earth is going on? And I'm out there with my dad. I'm really stressed out. And my dad is laughing. I'm like, come on, like, what is so funny about this? He's like, oh, it's great. They're having fun. I'm like, I'm so stressed out right now. How are you not worried? I'm hysterical thinking about it. And my dad laughs and he's like, that's the beauty of being a grandparent. You worry about your kids, but you don't have to worry about your grandkids, because I know, like I don't have to worry about my grandkids because I know you've got them. Like this is the man who picked me up from some like really, really dark and scary places. And I don't mean like actually dark, scary places. And he doesn't worry about my kids because he knows I've got them, and in that moment, I looked at him and I was like, do you still worry about me? He's like, I don't worry about you anymore. That's a miracle. And that's nothing I did on my own. I did not do that on my own. And that is 100% Alcoholics Anonymous. A few years later, actually, this was about a year and a half ago, and I got a phone call. And that phone call let me know that my dad had cancer and he needed to have some surgery pretty quickly. And I called my sponsor, and I was scared. And I told her that I didn't know how to pray about this. I told her I wanted God to be Santa Claus, and I wanted everything to be fixed, and I wanted everything to be okay. And I was really scared and I did not know what to do. She told me that it's not about me. I didn't like that. But that we pray that no matter what happens, that we're okay and that we can show up for our family. And I did that. And I was able to stay sane, and I was able to stay sober. And my dad's doing really well today. And a few months later, I got a call from the principal at my son's school. My son was in the office because some kids had pushed him down and were kicking him on the playground. My son's in kindergarten. My first thought was like a lot of sadness, right? And then immediately I was ready to throw down on the kindergarten playground because absolutely no one messes with my kid. Because, right, I'm an alcoholic, that's my first thing. But you know what? I knew what to do this time, right? I knew how to pray about it, and I knew what actions to take. And I knew that it wasn't about me, and I just needed to show up for my son and not make things worse. And, things are fine because like, as often things go when you're 5 and 6 years old, they just kind of like work themselves out. But like this program gave me the tools. So I knew what to do and didn't have to make it worse, and I didn't have to make it about myself. The promises say that we will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And, that's there. That was that right there. But, there are a lot of times where when I'm feeling baffled by a situation, I actually do and know what to do. And that's call another alcoholic who's been where I've been, instead of, dwell or go on a shame spiral or freak out. Like I can pick up the phone to another alcoholic who's a parent, or has had a sick father, and they tell me what they did, right? And they tell me that they've walked through what I walked through, and they know what it feels like, but they managed to stay sober, and that they know I can do it too. Because the solution is right here, right? We just don't drink. We do it one day at a time. The women in this program have really saved my life, and you dudes too have as well. Don't worry. But like I have, motherhood has been honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. Whatever that looks like for you. But like there are times where, like my power list is tested on a daily, every single day, because 4 and 6-year-olds, they don't want to listen to you so much. And I can call someone in this program when I'm feeling absolutely crazy, and they can be like, yeah, me too. You're not a bad mom. You're sober for your kids, and you're calling and asking what I should do. And it's just it's so safe. It's really safe. And I'm like beyond grateful for that. This past summer, I was able to redo a 9th step with one of my sisters. I have a sister who lives abroad, and I really wanted to do this face to face with her. It's something I've been holding on to for years, something I did in sobriety. Oh, those are always fun, right? Making amends for things we did when we were sober. But I'd been holding on to it for years. I was feeling like a really bad sister about it. So I went and, I had my flashcard, and I made this amends because I was losing sleep over it. And she looked me dead in the eye and was like, I don't remember that at all. And not all of my amends go like that, but part of the beauty of this program is that we are granted a new freedom, right? I can clean my side of the street, and she didn't, even if she had remembered it, that would have granted us an opportunity for healing and learning and growing from there. But so often, we create our own shackles, right? No one else is doing that. It's all us. That sister, my little sister, who kind of robbed her of her high school years, her sister who is not doing so well. In January, she had a baby. And I got to go down and do her dishes and fold her laundry and hold that little boy and just be a big sister and actually be a big sister to her. And for once, just not be selfish and self-centered and show up for her in ways that I wasn't able to do before. And that's part of the living amends. We can actually show up and have meaningful relationships with the people in our lives. Something I'm working on today right now. And again, this is one of those things where I say that self-disclosure is the currency of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm working on, I'm going through the traditions right now. I'm starting working on the traditions with my sponsor for how it applies in my marriage. Marriage is also really hard. And it's one of those things I feel like people don't talk about a lot because it can feel really shameful. But right, it's also just making that daily choice. And I have the opportunity, these steps and these traditions, it's a program for life, and I can do it in every avenue. And I'm just really grateful for that. Again, I'm talking about, having my kids, they've never seen me take a drink. They know I go to my meetings. They don't yet know what that means. But sometimes I drag them. I brought them to this meeting before, I bring them to childcare meetings. But once I was driving my kids to a meeting, and my now 6-year-old, I think he was 5 at the time, and he's like, hey, so is everyone a mom at this meeting? And I'm like, no, why? Why would you say that? No. And he's like, well, you say you go to these meetings because they make you be a better mom. And I was like, yeah. Anyways, I was just it's the truth, right? And I haven't yet had to navigate, how do I tell my kids that I'm an alcoholic? But I don't have to stress about that right now. Because you know what? I will be able to call someone and ask them how they did it. There's there's nothing that these people, like, I know that there's nothing that people in these rooms won't do for me and like right back at you. If you had told that 21-year-old who was living in a condemned garage, chain smoking cigarettes, and afraid of the entire world and just unable to get sober, that I would have the life I had today, I would have laughed in your face. My life today is beautiful and it's very far from perfect. But I'm just a very, very grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope to always remain teachable. I have a lot more to learn in this program. And I'm just really, really grateful to be here. And I think that's all I've got tonight. So thank you.